Okay, hello everyone. I can see that we're at 20 attendees now, so I'm going to go ahead and start today's webinar on the National Lottery funding and opportunities for rare disease organisations during COVID-19. Thank you all for joining us today. Hopefully it'll be really useful for you and your patient organisations. So for anyone that's new to Find a Cure, we are a rare disease organisation, and we see a world in which all rare diseases have treatments made together with patients for patients, so a collaborative approach to rare disease treatments. We want to accelerate treatment development and care. So at Find a Cure, we work to empower patient groups, promote repurposing for rare diseases, and build a rare disease community to accelerate treatment development. And on today's webinar, I'm joined by Alice Ridgway, who is the funding manager for the National Lottery, and she will be taking us through the changes to the National Lottery scheme at this time. So it's going to follow quite a loose schedule today, so that there's plenty of time for Alice to answer all of the questions that you want to ask. So after she's given an overview of recent changes, there will be plenty of time for that Q&A session to take place. Some of the aims of today's webinar are to find out what the changes to the National Lottery funding are during COVID-19, the limit for each funding application, the new application process, the decision-making process at the National Lottery, and the funding priorities of the National Lottery in light of COVID-19. So for now, after that brief introduction, I'm going to pass you over to Alice to take us through the National Lottery Community Fund and the Coronavirus Community Support Fund.
Great, thank you, Philippa. Let me just share my screen. Great, thank you. Yeah, so as Philippa said, I'm just going to take you through the kind of basics of who we are, what we do, and the kind of funding that we're offering at the moment. So first of all, I thought I would talk about who we are as an organisation and also where we get our funding from. So we are the National Lottery Community Fund. We distribute funding on behalf of lottery players. So every time you play the lottery, a portion of the ticket that you've paid for comes to us to distribute. There are also other lottery funder distributors. So you may have heard of the Arts Council, there's the Heritage Lottery, and there's also Sport England. We are the community funder, so we fund community projects. And I think the first thing to say with us, when we talk about community, I'm not just talking about a place-based community. I think often where people think of community, they think of their local area where they live, but we mean also communities of people that are brought together around, you know, shared interests, shared issues and needs that they have. So we do have a kind of wider definition of what we mean by community. As an organisation, we believe that when you put people in the lead, then communities can thrive. And we are, I believe, if we're not the largest funder, we are one of the biggest, and we have awarded about 500 million a year. And 86% of our grants are under £10,000. So a lot of our grants are really at that smaller level. We are also quite geographically quite spread, so we fund projects across England. We also do projects in Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales as well. So the funding programme that we have at the moment is our emergency response funding. So we're calling this our Coronavirus Community Support Fund. So currently we are really prioritising funding projects and organisations that are supporting communities through this pandemic. This funding is made up of 200 million, which has come from the government's financial package of support for charities, and they've kind of said that they will set aside 750 million for charities, and 200 million of that has come to us to distribute. And we are primarily trying to focus on small and medium-sized organisations. Please note that we are kind of reviewing the situation on an ongoing basis, and any updates will be shared on our website. This will be a kind of time-limited fund. We're not sure when or if it will close, But just to kind of reiterate that our funding will still be available at the end of this. We are kind of a long-term funder, so there will be something else to follow this. So please just keep an eye on our website. But I would say if you are looking to apply to this programme, to do so as soon as possible. Currently, we are awarding grants under 2 grants programmes. So we have a small grants programme and a large grant programme. And this kind of follows the pattern of what we always do, which is our awards for all, our small grants programme of £300 to £10,000, and our larger grant programme, which is normally called Reaching Communities and Partnerships, which is for grants of £10,000 to £100,000. At the moment, all grants are 6 months in length. And this is because we're really looking to get organisations and communities through this immediate crisis. So who can apply? We fund voluntary and community organisations. We fund registered charities or CIOs. We can fund a partnership of organisations as long as they're led by a voluntary or community organisation. And we can also fund not-for-profit companies, such as social enterprises, companies that are limited by guarantee, and CICs, as long as they have 2 or more directors. You don't have to be a registered organisation to apply to us. We do fund unregistered groups, generally under our small grants programme. We often encourage organisations to register as something, whether that's a CIC or a charity, just because in the future it opens up more funding opportunities, and also is just kind of better in terms of the legal protection that you get. However, you don't have to be registered to apply, but as I say, it's mostly under our small grants programme that we would fund unregistered groups. There are a few exceptions that we can't fund. So we can't fund individuals or sole traders. We can't fund organisations that are based outside the UK. We can't find anyone who's applying on behalf of another organisation. We also can't fund organisations that look to make profits and share these profits out privately. And currently under this fund, we're not funding schools and statutory bodies. Under our normal funding programmes, schools and statutory bodies such as councils can normally apply. However, for this fund in particular, we have said that these are not eligible. What can we fund under our programmes? As said, we are currently funding activities supporting people and communities affected by Covid-19. We can also help organisations overcome any acute financial difficulties that they are facing as a result of the pandemic. We're aware that a lot of organisations could be struggling right now, and we have said if you are losing income, you can come to us to apply for that lost income. Costs can include things like staff salaries, project activities, running costs. We can also fund equipment, organisational development, contributions to fixed costs and overheads, capacity development for your organisation, and also investment in your systems, infrastructure or people. I mean, particularly at the moment, we're seeing quite a lot of IT applications where people are having to now work remotely and need items for laptops to enable them to work from home. There are things that we cannot fund, and these are activities that make profits or private gain or benefit individuals. We don't fund campaigning or political activities. We also don't fund religious activities or anything that's a statutory requirement. We cannot fund alcohol, loan repayments, or overseas travel. Currently under this fund, we have 3 priorities where we will focus our funding. This is organisations supporting communities who experience challenges due to COVID-19, organisations providing services and support for vulnerable people and are seeing an increased demand, organisations which connect communities and support communities to work together. We also really encourage applications from small and medium-sized charities and groups, organisations that are working with communities such as LGBT+, disabled people and people with long-term health conditions, BAME communities, because these are really being hard hit by the pandemic, and we're aware that they need extra support at this time. We also encourage organisations to apply who are led by people with lived experience of the issues that they are addressing. So I thought I would kind of unpick each of those 3 priorities a bit more so that you can kind of understand what we're looking for under each of those. So the first one, organisations supporting people and communities who experience disproportionate challenge and difficulty as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. This category includes, for instance, organisations supporting older people, disabled people, including people with long-term health conditions, and organisations working with Black, Asian, minority ethnic communities, all of which are facing specific challenges during the current crisis. It also includes organisations who provide advice and support to those who are pushed into a crisis as a result of the pandemic. And this category also includes those organisations supporting people and their families with end-of-life care. This isn't an exhausted list of everything that comes under here, but hopefully it kind of gives you an idea of what we're looking for. The second priority we have is organisations providing services and support for vulnerable people, for which there'll be increased demand as a result of the COVID-19 crisis. This category includes organisations supporting people and families who face financial hardship as a result of the pandemic. It also includes organisations working to prevent domestic abuse and violence against protected groups, those working with homeless people, and those supporting vulnerable children and young people. Finally, we also know there is an increased demand for mental health support and support to mitigate the increased challenges of isolation and loneliness that a lot of people will be experiencing as a result of this pandemic. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, it's just meant to be a guide of what we're including under these priorities. Finally, our final priority under this fund is organisations which connect communities and support communities to work together to respond to COVID-19. This is where we're trying to support infrastructure because we're aware that organisations are really struggling and could need some support. So this includes organisations supporting local community activity, including volunteering and community organising, and kind of bringing groups together locally in order to respond to the pandemic. It also includes organisations supporting community and sector infrastructure, including public information. We know there is increased demand for support with the development of digital data and technology capabilities. Finally, we want to support building capacity and infrastructure of BAME and other marginalised communities to ensure they're in a better position after this initial emergency response. Again, this is not an exhaustive list, but it's just to kind of show what we are prioritising. As I've said before, we have 2 grant programmes. We've got small and larger grants, and grants of 6 months only. Just to kind of say, you can only apply once, you cannot have multiple grants. So you can either have a small grant or a large grant, you cannot have multiples. So please really think about the amount of funding that you need and what you want to prioritise before you apply. If you've applied for other emergency government funding, so the government have announced specific pots for, say, homelessness organisations, there's also ones for hospices, and a range of others. If you're thinking of or have applied to that as well, please let us know. It doesn't stop you from applying. However, it will need to be for a different project. So we can't fund the same project that you've applied to another government fund for. So information you'll need for your application. So as I've said, we've got 2 grant programmes. So we've got the large and the small grants. So what I would say is that we have stripped back our application process, and that's particularly with our larger grants. Our smaller grant programme, Awards for All, was already quite light touch, and so it hasn't really changed all that much. With reaching communities, it has become a much more simpler process, so there'll be less information that you would normally need. However, the information that you need, particularly around your idea, is not that different between the 2 programmes. In both cases, we'll want information about the name of the project, where it will take place, what you would like to do, the difference it would make, and how it fits with our funding priorities. You'll also be asked for a project budget and how long you want the money for. I think the difference between the programmes when it comes to an idea is potentially the level of detail that you'll put into each of these sections. So if you're asking for £100,000, you'll need to put in a lot more detail than you would if you're asking for £10,000. I think the main difference between the two programmes is really in the financial information that we will ask. So under Awards for All, it is one form. You'll be asked for things like your income, your expenditure. You will need to provide a bank statement so that we can verify your details and know where the grant will go if you are successful. Under the larger grant programmes, under Reaching Communities, particularly if you're applying for a larger amount, we will want to see more financial information. We'll probably likely ask for a cash flow. We want to understand where your reserves are at, and we will look at your annual accounts as well. This will be a separate form that you will be sent after you have submitted online. However, you will be given a named person who you can contact. So if you're struggling to fill in this financial information and you're unsure about which attachments you need to include, you will have someone that you'll be able to contact to ask for help, and they will be able to talk you through and answer any questions that you may have. Within your application, you might also want to ask yourself some of these questions. So while we have our main funding priorities for our fund, we're still looking for things that are people-led, are strength-based and connected. And what we mean by that is, have you put people in the lead? Have you spoken to people in your community? Do you know that this is what they want and what they need? Have you looked at, in terms of strengths-based, have you looked at what's already working and how you can build on these positive things that are already working in your community? Are you connected? Do you know other groups that are doing things similarly to your project? How could you work together? Can you share information? Can you share referral pathways? So I think these are things that you should maybe bear in mind when you're applying to our funding. When you're looking at how you can apply, for Awards for All, you need to go on our website, and there's an application portal for you to go through, and it will take you through the application process. For our larger grants programme for Reaching Communities, you can either apply online or you can send us your application via email. I've put in the email address for the London and South East team because that's the team that I'm in. However, on our website, there'll be other email addresses of the different regional teams. So if you're not based in London and the South East, you'll be able to find the email address. If that is how you want to submit your application, you'll be able to find the email address for your region. After you've applied, under Awards for All, you won't necessarily be given a funding officer. However, for Reaching Communities, you will, who will make contact with you. And so you have someone that you have, and they may ask for more information. So that could be if things aren't clear, or they're asking for the additional financial information that we need to progress your application. Please note that due to heavy demand on this fund, it is currently difficult to set a time frame. We are trying to get through applications as quickly as possible, as we understand that this crisis is happening now and people need funding now. We are doing the best we can, however, the demand is quite high. Thank you for listening. That's kind of a whistle-stop tour of our application process right now. So I'd like to kind of throw it open now with any questions that you have. I've also put up there the information of our advice line. If anyone has any further questions and would like to talk to us.